and welcome everybody to our second webinar from Education in Early Years, looking at the Assessor and Teacher Network. So you're very, very welcome. I'm Janet King. I'm the Sector Manager for Education in Early Years, and joined by a host. I won't get the names right because I can't see people, but we've got moderators, we've got Helen, who most of you will already know, and hopefully we'll be able to take some time today, this afternoon, to look at Assignment 2, and in particular focusing in on those structured observations. Can I just ask that moderators, if you want to turn your cameras off, you absolutely can, but if you want to pop them on when you're speaking, I think that would be really helpful for people. Okay, so let's make a start. Last time we focused very much on Assignment 2 Part 1, and we also looked at the structured observations, but only very generally. So we'll take a deeper dive in this session today. So again, a very warm welcome to everybody, and thank you for giving up your very valuable time. Every day is a busy day, so we're really, really delighted that you've taken the time to join us at the end of your busy day. Thank you. The focus will look at those structured observations and what they mean, and the moderators will take you through those through a series of questions in the breakout rooms for discussions. We'll talk about standardization and some next steps in terms of what's available and accessible to you as assessors, tutors on the programme, and further support and CPD that's available. And as always, there'll be some time for questions and the evaluation at the end. If I can ask you to use the chat function on the screen if you've got any questions, because colleagues will be manning that when they're not actually presenting, and so we'll use that chat. So as you know, this is being recorded, but the breakout rooms, as Helen has said, will not. So that's because you can feel free, and it's a very safe space to be able to share and to relate any experiences, and also to ask any questions that you want to ask as well, whilst you've got that undivided attention of the expert moderators that we have available today. I'm going to hand over now to Helen, because Helen, it wouldn't be a webinar without a confidence level check. Over to you.
Thanks, Janet. You're absolutely right. So I've launched the poll there. We're asking about your confidence level at the start of this session. So how confident do you feel, before we get into the flow of things today, about assessing the Education Early Years T level, the Year 2 assessments? 1 is low and 10 is high. So just to get us going, and it is anonymous, please tell us which number you put yourself at the start. And we'll leave that open for a little while to give you the chance to tell us your starting level. We're hoping that it will be it'll progress after attending today and doing the activities and listening to the experts we've got here today. So thank you. Many of you have voted and are voting. We've got a mix right across the board, which we absolutely expect. We've got some people down at the 1s and some people up at the 9s and 10s. So that's great. I'm going to give it a little bit longer. Thank you. We've got people putting them in the chat as well. Brilliant. Somewhere smack in the middle. That's great. Thanks. I'm going to close it in a second. So if you haven't had the chance to vote yet, please do. We've got a range of answers, as I said. So let me just close that poll in 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to share the results as well. So you should see in the chat what the results are as well. So as you can see, we've got a broad range of confidence levels. So thanks for that. I'm going to hand back to Janet.
Thank you. Thanks, Helen. And I think we are looking at Laura, who's going to talk us through some actions from the previous network. Thanks, Laura.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I just wanted to mention what happened since the last one. So if you did attend our last network event on the 18th of December, thank you. We did say that we would get that recording onto our YouTube channel. So I just wanted to let you all know that that is on there now. So you can either relook at it or share with colleagues, or if you did miss the last one, it is available now. We did take lots of questions, and we appreciate all the questions that's been asked. I know we do ask you to add one when you sign up as well. So we don't want you to think we're not listening to those questions questions or doing anything with them. We obviously covered quite a lot last time, and then we've come away and we've done a frequently asked questions table. There's lots and lots of questions on there. So we've decided that they will all go onto the website. So that's in development at the moment, and I've put the link on the screen where they will live eventually. So it'll be a couple of weeks. They'll all be live on there, and as soon as they're live, we will add something to the T-level monthly newsletter so you can access them, and then you can share them wider as well with colleagues, because there's lots of things on there about part 1, part 2 and general feedback. There are some questions that are quite specific to individual providers, so in those cases they'll be picked up by your own moderators, so you should get an email from them to answer your questions. As always, if you need any other support, do use either contact your own moderator or the T-level support email address. And then just to mention, the network events will pause while structured observations take place, and we'll restart them back up in July, and then we'll have regular ones again. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That's fantastic. So in the first network, we talked very broadly, as I said at the beginning, about assignment 2, about the practical elements that are involved in the T-level, about the role of the assessor. And what we're going to do now is just sort of reflect. I just want to reflect for a couple of minutes on what assignment 2 is all about, because there's going to be people on the call today who are starting this, who are doing this assessor role for the first time perhaps, and also very well established assessors who are very familiar with the T-level role of the assessor now as well, who've gone through that process. So let's not make any assumptions of that, and let's just think, what are we talking about when we talk about assignment 2? Now, assignment 2, if you're doing it from an early years educator perspective, is split into 2 parts. You heard Laura talk there about assignment 2 part 1 and assignment 2 part 2. And assignment 2 part 1 is all of those early years educator competencies. So there's 41 currently early years educator competencies that need to be met over time. And so whilst your students are completing their 750 hours, which is the requirement for those early years students, they will complete the criteria, the competencies within assignment 2 part 1. Assignment 2 part 2 and the entirety of assignment 2 for the assisting teaching students is based around structured observations. So what do we mean by structured observations? So these are topics that are set by NCFE, and there's often a range of things that you can choose from, but the criteria that goes with any of the topics chosen are set. And each student will need to plan very carefully for those. Each observation will then be carried out once and observed by the assessor. So the student is planning very carefully for the criteria that's been set, whether they're doing it for early years in an early years setting, or whether they're doing that in a classroom environment as an assisting teacher specialism. There's 3 of those, each with different topics, each with different criteria to meet. The planning of those structured observations is absolutely critical. There are 3 of them. Sometimes we'll refer to them as SOs, and people get quite sort of familiar with SO1, SO2, SO3. We're talking about the structured observations that take place in the 2nd year. Can we practice for those? Yes, absolutely. Can we assess them? No. You've got to assess them in that 2nd year, and you'll work very closely with your moderator in terms of the arrangements for that process. I say that planning is very important because when we're working with children, when we're working with young people, things go off plan. But if you've got this one chance to be observed against these set criteria for SO1, SO2 and SO3, the plan can very much help the assessor and the student to bring things back through a professional discussion to enable that student then to really maximise and take advantage of how they would have planned to achieve that particular criteria. So let's just take a moment now to read through these comments here. Each observation must be carried out once and observed by the provider-appointed assessor. That is likely to be you on the call today. As the skills are real and occupationally valid, they can only be observed on the industry placement. So there's no simulation, there's no classroom activity. This must take place in the setting. The observations are one-off end assessments and therefore should not be carried out until the provider is confident the student will demonstrate their skills to the very best of their ability. So, would you want to be changing placements just before a structured observation? Not really. Would you want the student to be settled and confident and feeling that, you know, that they've got a good rapport with the children and with the supervisor or class teacher? Absolutely. Now, the difference here is that these observations are marked, they're scored, which is a wonderful opportunity for those students who really blossom in their placement to really showcase their skills, to hone those skills. Assessors will carry out the observations and award a score or a mark against each criteria, and that totalizes, it gives a final total for that observation. The total number of scores across all 3 of those structured observations will then count towards their final grade as part of their occupational specialism. So, assignment 2, part 1 for the early years is something that's on a continuum. It goes on throughout the study. Assignment 2, part 2 for early years, second year only, 3 structured observations, criteria set by NCFE. For the assisting teachers, they will also be doing 3 structured observations. They can practice for those structured observations throughout the first year, but they will take place in their occupational specialism year, in their second year of delivery in their placement. I'm now going to hand over to Helen, because Helen, I believe it's time for us to go into breakout rooms to discuss this with moderators who have a series of questions to get some discussions flowing. Is that right?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Laura, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just assigning people at the moment as people are coming in, and I couldn't go off mute until I'd come out with the assigning. So if you want to mention anything else before we go into the rooms, please do. I'm still finishing off the allocation.
Yeah, no worries. I think what I'll do is just reiterate the fact that, you know, you won't be recorded in your breakout rooms. This is a safe space to share experiences, to think about questions that you may have that are sort of meaningful and purposeful to you, and to really engage in the conversations. You may be an assessor for the first time. I speak to people who are assessors and they're coming up to their first time next year. Also speaking to assessors who've been assessing for years, but they're new to the T-level this year. And then other assessors who've been through this process. And I think the idea of a professional network like this really does raise confidence levels in terms of, you know, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And what's hopefully taken away that any fear or anxiety, because you're meeting the moderators now, and they're absolutely wonderful individuals who know what it's like to be in your shoes. And I think that's so important, that we're all thinking about this as a team, and we're all here to support the sector, whether that's within the teaching sector or within the early years workforce sector. That's our main aim as a sort of collaborate. Laura, I don't know if you just want to mention anything about what you think you might get from these discussions. What are you hoping to get from the breakout room?
Yeah, I think before we go into the breakout rooms, it was just to say that moderators are in there to facilitate that discussion. But if anyone wants to share best practice that they've gone through, if anyone's got any burning questions, if anyone's got any criteria that they're unsure of that they want to ask about, they're the things that we was hoping to discuss once we get into the breakout rooms.
Brilliant.
How are you getting on with it, Helen?
Yes, all the rooms are now assigned, so I'm going to open them.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all shortly.
See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, so thank you to everybody for going into your breakout rooms and for joining in. I mean, I was privileged to be part of the of being able to listen to some of the discussion in group 2 there when Louise brought them into the main room. So I know that the conversations have been useful. I also appreciate that people are at all different stages, but actually that's what a professional network does really well, and to be able to share all of those. So moderators, any key highlights, please just pop them in the chat, and then we can make sure we capture everything rather than spend time now going through what you've discussed. So Louise, I think you're back with us now to tell us all about standardization. Over to you, Louise. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So with regards to standardization, so each provider appointed assessor should be qualified to the level of the qualifications that they're assessing. So obviously with T level, we need to be qualified at the specified level to assess on that, and be trained and standardized per the requirements of the T level qualification. So we said some best practice for standardization would be to standardize a sample of the structured observations, work together if you are able to shadow visit with other assessors and sort of work together and mark those observations that you've done, grade those observations, and then standardize those together to ensure consistency through your standardization. I'm aware that some assessors tend to be maybe the only appointed assessor within their centre, but we do have some centres that are part of a group, and they have been able to standardise with other assessors from their college group centres. So that's been a really good support for standardisation. And there is also mandatory standardisation provided by NCFE. For this session, that must be completed by sort of no later than the Thursday, the 29th of February. It's probably better to get that completed before the structured observation windows start. And we've put some tasks together that we hope will be really helpful in standardising some of those more tricky criteria that can be found in the EYE and AT structured observations, and you will find that standardisation link to that standardisation training through the website. But if you did have any queries about accessing the standardisation training, please don't hesitate to contact your moderator and they can give you some guidance about accessing that. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Louise. Okay, feedback and share remarks.
I'm back. I'm here.
Thank you, Fran.
Hi.
Oh, Laura, even. Thank you.
Yeah, Laura. Yeah. Hi, I'm Laura. I'm just going to go through the feedback and sharing marks. Verbal feedback can be given in terms of how the student has performed. However, the assessor's marks should be shared with the students after all 3 structured observations have been completed and standardised. Also, just to mention, with the marks, there is a final mark document located on the tutor guide, so just make sure that you're aware of that document. This is for the feedback and the sharing marks, this is to provide students with the opportunity to request a review of provider marking before their marks are submitted to NCFE. Students must be aware that marks may change depending on the outcome of the moderation. And also, for moderation purposes, moderators cannot give any feedback or share marks with assessors. So it's important as well to just make sure that you're aware of all the documentation that's required. Again, just to reiterate the point of making sure that you're aware of the documents on the tutor guidance for AT and for EYE. And there's a final mark document that you just need to make sure that you're aware of as well for any new assessors that have come on board. So that's the end of my slide. So I'll move you across to Frances. So she'll be talking through what happens next. Thanks, Frances.
Thank you, Laura. Oh, I froze then. Okay, so following moderation, which is when we've been out to look at a selection of structured observations 1, 2 and 3. So we will see 2 for each of the students that we have selected. The moderator will record their marks for the sample of students, and there will be 3 potential outcomes from this activity. So quite often we talk about tolerance, and that's where we've both done the activity together in terms of observation and professional discussion, and we then both separately, the assessor and myself, the moderator, will go back and type up the notes and then come to a conclusion independently what mark you would give to that student. We then upload that onto the portal, and you do the same, and the computer decides whether we were within tolerance. And it's a percentage. I don't know what the percentage is. I just want my computer to do what I ask it to do. I don't quite understand what it does. Excuse me. Okay, so the moderator and provider marks are, if they are within tolerance, this means that the provider's marks would be accepted with no further action. And that is that your mark and my mark is similar. It doesn't have to be spot on, but it's similar across the structured observations. So we are on the same page together. We've seen it for what it is. We've made sure that there's no bias or previous knowledge of the student brought into effect. And so, yes, both our marks are within tolerance according to Portal, the computer. The moderator and provider marks are out of tolerance, but they are out of tolerance in a consistent way. And by that, they mean they are both too lenient or both too strict, but we are consistent in being lenient or strict. So it would be out of tolerance for the, I'll stop there. So either we're too lean or too strict. So we're out of tolerance, but we are similar, the same, marking in the same way. So in this case, a calculation would be applied to compare the providers and moderators' marks in order to determine the required adjustment for each student. The adjustment will then be applied to all students on the cohort. And at that stage, we wouldn't be observing any further students, and the same for the first bullet point. We wouldn't be observing any further students because we're in tolerance. We don't need to check if we're tolerant with the other students. We will kind of stop at that stage. The third bullet point, the moderator and provider marks are out of tolerance, but not in a consistent way that can be safely adjusted. In this case, additional support would be made available to the provider, and all student evidence will need to be reassessed and moderated. So we would then, that would become stage 2, and we would select another number of students that haven't been observed in stage 1, say, for us to, for you to download all their information. We won't be coming out to observe them. We'll just go by what you've provided. So that should be the students' planning records, your write-up of the activity and the professional discussion and what mark you came to, and then we will mark how we would if we were there, but it is slightly difficult because we are not there, so we can only go on the information that you provide us, and then we will put those marks back into the system. If that happens and we are out of tolerance again, we would then look at the next batch of students, and I think you'll see on the website that there are there's a table that lets you know exactly how many students you have in your cohort and how many students we will be looking to mark and observe each time. I hope that makes sense. I think I've confused myself there. Sorry. I will hand over to Laura Robshaw. Is it you next?
think what we can see here, I just want to say thank
sorry.
you, by the way. It's all right. I just want to say thank you to Louise and Laura and Francis there, because there's such a lot of information, I think, to go through, and this is the difference. What we've just been looking at and talking about now in these structured observations, that's what's making the difference in this, the role of the assessor within the T levels, within those 3 structured observations, whether they're for the early years or whether they're for assisting teaching. So the scoring, the marking and the moderation and tolerance are really what are making that difference. But the moderators, you've met them, they will support you. Those people who've been through the process will absolutely appreciate that the guidance that you get is second to none, and the support that you get, and now from this network, the support that you can provide for each other as well, will really really support you along the way of any new experiences. You will find the Chief Examiner and Chief Moderator report for both the early years educator and assisting teacher for summer 2023 available on the website, and they're really good to help you to refresh, to actually hone in on some of those key issues that might have been raised, and just to give you that reassurance, especially if you're going to be doing this for the first time moving forward. This is all very jazzy, isn't it? All very new. So on here, you can use, you can get your QR codes there. You can find out all about our up and coming CPD events. So there's a whole range of things that go on all the way through the year. I know Laura talked about things coming to a bit of a pause with the network because of the moderation process and that picking up in July, but there are continual CPD programs run by the lovely Helen and her team to be able to you know, to stay on track, and if there's anything as well that you feel that you would like to discuss in those CPD sessions, I know that Helen and her team are extremely accommodating. There's also a QR code there to our assisting teaching forum. So I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's more of a structured event. It's 5 till 6, and you'll find out all about that there, and that's later on in the month. Okay, so I just want to now pass back to Helen. And Helen, if you'd like to do your wonderful confidence level checks and bring the second assessor network to a close. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Sorry, I'm just getting it loaded up nice and swiftly there for a change. This is asking now, how do you feel now? What's your confidence level now after you've had the chance to answer ask some questions, listen to the moderators, get the input from them? Same scale as we did at the start. 1 is low and 10 is high. So please let us know how confident you feel now. And we're hoping there's been some development. Oh, straight away at the moment, I'm going to cross my fingers and say we've got nobody now at 1 to 2, which is wonderful. So everybody's moved up some, which is great. And if you don't feel like you've moved up, the moderators are here to help and guide and support you. So please reach out in year 2 if you have any